You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. Really excited about the guest today. We have a friend of mine, Joey Campagna. He's a seasoned marketing professional and the Executive Vice President of Marketing and Partnership for Vet and Dental Divisions at CUBEX since 2018. Joey is also a co-founder of Ask Jan for Help. With 14 years of experience at IDEX Laboratories, where actually that's how we met. I remember the day we were in Cornell.
Yes.
I was pushing SmartFlow there and you were there as well. So that was, I remember I met you there. Joey brings a wealth of expertise in sales and marketing. Alongside his corporate endeavors, Joey is the proud owner of Blue Swan Media, specializing in photography and video production since 2011. Graduated from Marquette University, BA in Health Sciences, and served in the U.S. Army via ROTC. Joey currently resides near Rochester, New York, with his wife and children. Joey, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Oh, thank you, Ivan, for the invite. Super excited to be here.
So, you've been in CUBEX for a long time. They are a company that old friends. I know those guys for a while. We were integrating with them in the SmartFlow days, but there's lots of things that happen. Lots of things evolved. Tell us, since no one is listening, why do you like CUBEX and why are you there now for 70 years already?
Yeah. So, I guess it's 6. It'll be 6 in May. So what excited me about CUBEX coming from IDEX for that decade and a half that I was there was that, inventory management was then and really largely still is an unsolved problem in veterinary medicine. There are so many practices that struggle with an inefficient manual system. And when I compared that to the diagnostic space, what I saw was an opportunity to revolutionize a category the same way that IDEX and Antec did back at around the turn of the millennium, late 90s and early 2000s. And that's the mission that we're still on.
Okay.
That's awesome, Joey. So, if people don't know who or what CUBEX is, could you help kind of like paint a picture in an auditory way for our audience to kind of give them a heads up as to what exactly it is that you guys do? And then maybe we could roll into some of the innovations that you guys are currently undertaking as a company.
Sure. Well, so CUBEX really at its heart is a smart inventory company. And you might ask, well, what's smart inventory? The way we define that is that it's a blend of software and intelligent hardware that makes inventory management much more efficient and reduces costs in a few different ways. So if you think about this as in terms of an analogy at your house, imagine if your refrigerator knew what was inside of it and then could reorder a bottle of ketchup for you when you started running low so that you don't run out of ketchup. We do the same thing, but within the veterinary practices for medications, especially dangerous drugs that we manage. So that frees up staff time. It allows practices to carry less on the shelf because they're not as worried about running out of product. Use my previous analogy. You don't need to have 3 bottles of ketchup sitting in the basement because you're afraid of running out. If the fridge is going to be able to reorder it for you when the bottle gets low, right? So we can free up a lot of cash in that way. And we also save a ton of time. So there are lots of benefits to what we do. These are hospital grade cabinets. In fact, one of my favorite realizations after I started working here was seeing this technology in the background on all kinds of medical shows like House MD or Grey's Anatomy, where I wasn't really familiar with it before, but once I got to know it, I'd see it everywhere, right? And that's because there's not a human hospital out there that doesn't use smart inventory. It just makes too much sense, and we're excited to bring that to the veterinary marketplace.
So, can you just again, so for more visual for people that are listening, describe the workflow? What is it like? What is this inventory management system in the hospital? How would one approach it? And how does technology work for us to know? Because you're right, and you're right in the heart of it. The inventory processes, practice management systems that are trying to do it are all horrific. like just horrible.
Yeah,
And I'm building a third hospital right now here where I live. And this is our biggest problem because we don't have a solid process for inventory management. And that's actually the third part that you guys introduced, because you said inventory, you said the hardware, software, but also you help with the process. So there's a third
we
piece
do.
because you're helping. I know that you guys are very strong in training the teams how to do it. So can you describe the user journey, if you will, of someone that uses the cabinet, and how does it track down and does the minimums, and how does it do the reordering?
Yeah, absolutely, Ivan. So the central problem that we're solving is knowing how much stuff is in the practice at all times and making sure that we don't run out of the stuff that we need, right? And that sounds easy, but it's really hard because, to your point, veterinary medicine is kind of a high entropy environment, right? We've got emergent cases often coming in, and everybody is really focused on patient care most of the time, which is terrific. But we've also got to be mindful of business processes, which are usually less exciting and can kind of tend to become the last thing anybody wants to pay lots and lots of attention to. So to describe the workflow really simply, I'll kind of use my food analogy again because people understand that. So let's say I want to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. In a manual environment, I'm going to go through the pantry and look for some bread and then grab some peanut butter and grab some jelly, hope everything is there, and then make that peanut butter and jelly sandwich however I want to make it, which sounds terrific, right? The problem is if there are lots of other people in the house that are also counting on being able to use those ingredients and we run out of some, or I don't put it back in the right place, it can cause a little bit of consternation. And you may have had an issue like this at your house sometime recently, right? Well, I can't find the whatever. And this happens every day in vet med, right? So at CUBEX, we actually have a couple of different workflows that you can think about in terms of how to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The first is what we call a PIMS first workflow. So that's where you're going to start at your practice management system. You're going to bring up a case. You're going to have a patient screen there, and you're going to say, Fluffy needs a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, whatever that is. 1 cc of, insert drug here, or 7 days of Apoquil, whatever it is. Then you're going to go over to your smart cabinet or your suite of smart cabinets, depending on the kind of system we have set up, and you're going to pull up Fluffy on the screen on the smart cabinet, and you're going to say, yep, I'm here for Fluffy, and yep, I want to take out that 7-day course of Apoquil, right? The smart cabinet is going to open a drawer or a door, depending on where you have it stored, and it's going to point exactly in the direction where the Apoquil is. It's going to say, take out the 7 tablets, please. You're going to do that, and then you're going to go on your way. The other workflow involves actually just going right to the cabinet and saying, I need 7 days worth of Apoquil for this patient. The cabinet's already going to know all of the patients that are checked into the hospital because we have 2 integration with almost every PIMS system out there. So it's going to say, I've got Fluffy right here. What do you need? What medication do you want to take out? You're going to say Apoquil, and you're going to grab it and go. So in both of those cases, the cabinet is able to decrement the inventory, right? So we're going to go from 100 tablets of Apoquil on hand down to 93. We're going to make sure that that 7-day course of Apoquil goes onto the client invoice. And that's very important because one of the biggest financial areas of opportunity for us is resolving missed charges, which are a big problem, as you know, Ivan, from your days at IDEX. It's the same issue. And then third, if it's a controlled substance or a dangerous drug, which is a term we use for substances like propofol or gabapentin in some states, they're not technically controlled, but they're monitored. If it's a controlled substance, we're actually going to log that transaction electronically. That means we can move past the 3-ring binder and the pen and paper and all those consolidated logs that we've got that sometimes get lost and are often illegible and have unresolved discrepancies. That all goes away with smart inventory, and you've got a very clean electronic log that's uploaded and backed up to the cloud, and that sort of thing. So those 3 things happen with every transaction. And if you can get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich made every time and everything stays in stock and everybody knows where all those ingredients are, we have a smoother, happier hospital. Because when you take a step back and think about just how much energy gets exhausted on trying to find things or trying to count things so you can make sure you can order the right things, it's a lot. it's a huge burden on the staff.
So that's awesome and really, really good with analogies and descriptions. So I have the visual. Then
Yeah, I'm hungry. I want a peanut butter sandwich.
that was the goal, Sean, to make you hungry through this conversation. So what is new? So this is, CUBEX has been doing this and improving upon it. Integrations, I'm sure, improved. All the technology improved. What is exciting? What are the next steps? What are you excited about when you're thinking about innovations at CUBEX?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've done a lot of innovation, and really we've started with innovating sort of the category and trying to help customers get their arms around what this category is, especially as more options enter the space, right? So if you took a walk around VMX this year, you would have found more vendors there talking about solutions similar to, what we do than you ever have before. And I say similar to because number one, obviously I'm a little bit biased because I'm with CUBEX and I think we have the best stuff. But then, objectively speaking, really there's no other company that ticks all the boxes we do. But like I said, there are more now that at least tick some than there ever have been. So about 18 months ago, the safe handling framework was launched, and we were part of that along with other companies, including the American Animal Hospital Association. And safe handling is a framework of new standards around the management of controlled substances and dangerous drugs. This is an aspirational framework, right? So this isn't something that the DEA is mandating right now, but it's a way for us to sort of help customers quantify what they can do to move beyond the pen and paper when it comes to controlled substances. Again, there's no human hospital out there that's still using a 3-ring binder and a, longhand annotation of controlled substance logs. That just doesn't happen. And it's perfectly within the purview of the law to use those tools. That you can be fully compliant on paper, absolutely. But there are so many other better options today. How do you really think about that in a cohesive way? And then how do you make it something that's affordable for the average practice? So that's what safe handling does. And you can go to safehandling.info and learn all about that. It's a combination of technology and training for the staff that really creates that safe handling environment. And over 70% of corporate groups today are using safe handling to some degree. There's a series of 10 core elements. So 70% of corporate groups are using at least one of those core elements in at least a handful of their practices. Several of them have decided to go house-wide with full adoption of safe handling. And Soveto is a great example because they have all kinds of different practices within that group. They've got general practices, they've got some urgent care, they've got smaller practices, they've got larger hospitals, and they came to us and said, "Hey, look, this safe handling idea is really interesting. Can you help us make it work for our group?" And so we went through and did an analysis for every one of their hospitals, and the solution's different for each one. And how do we make sure it works financially for each individual practice? But there's a solution there for every single one of them. And I think customers within the space have known for a long time that CUBEX has been the choice for the largest emergency groups out there and the largest specialty groups out there. And one of the things that we've heard along the way is, how do I make this work for our practice? We have a 2-doctor GP general practice. How does smart inventory or safe handling make sense for us financially? And that's really what safe handling is intended to do for controlled substances and dangerous drugs. That sits within the broader smart inventory category. Smart inventory zooms out from just those controlled substances and other dangerous drugs and looks at the whole inventory picture: parasiticides, NSAIDs, white goods. And it says, how do we make this just function better so that you've got more time every day to do what you want to do instead of counting boxes? So that's part of the innovation story.
Yeah, it makes tons of sense, Joey. So my next question is, we've got lots of independent practices, lots of corporate groups, lots of people that listen to this show. And, it's pretty easy to associate CUBEX with the big inventory systems, those big drawers and boxes. But what kind of customers do you have? And what kind of customers do you want? If we've got a bunch of customers listening. So, and what kind of entry points is there for customers? Is it just a smart box, or can they come to you and buy software to do controlled drug management. What's the broad offering look like, and what's an ideal customer look like to you guys?
So that's a great question. And I'll start with something you mentioned, Sean, around the software for controlled drug management. So you guys have already figured out that I love analogies, right? And another one that we use at CUBEX a lot is kind of the fitness analogy, because when customers come to us, they want to get their practice in shape, whether it's just controlled substances, and that's often where we start, or if the whole inventory business. So, we look at the controlled drug piece, let's say, for example, and we've examined the potential for software only management there. And what we've seen time and again is that over time, the compliance just isn't there. So the analogy that we make for this is it's kind of like Ozempic or one of those other weight loss drugs, where you get nice results really early on. You get a much cleaner interface. I mean, some of those systems are gorgeous. They look really nice. They're super clean, but they don't solve the core problem. And what's interesting to me is that they're starting to realize this on their own too, because increasingly what we're seeing in the marketplace are these software only digital controlled substance logs starting to add some degree of hardware capability, because they're realizing that without hardware, without something in the physical real world in order to force that business process, it can just be ignored. And you're going to have the same kinds of issues with discrepancies that you had before. It's just going to look a lot better, right? So the hardware really is a necessary piece for compliance, especially with controlled drugs. And usually that's where customers want to start with us is, my controlled drug situation is out of control. When it's corporate groups, we're hearing more and more often about inspections happening. The DEA just visited one of our practices, and they levied a $300,000 fine, and we don't want this to ever happen again. So help, let's look at how we can fix that. And what we try to do with those customers is not only solve that problem, but make sure they see the full scope of opportunity within the practice to improve efficiency, drive safety, and also increase profitability with CUBEX. And that's the other piece that is really exciting, because 2024, it seems like, is the year of pause and fix workflows before hopefully a resumption of growth in 2025 when it comes to corporate acquisitions. We've heard from a lot of our corporate clients that, when they're looking to grow the business through acquisition, they're getting more pushback than they have in the past from the groups that they work with, from the PE firms that back them. And they're really under pressure to lower cost of goods sold, to increase EBITDA in response to increasing interest rates, increasing cost of financing, et cetera. And that's exactly what we do. We're typically reducing cost of goods sold anywhere between 300 and 500 basis points, and that goes straight to EBITDA.
Yeah, no, that's amen to that. And not only that, the pause, this is not an intentional pause, it's because the interest rates are pushing against EBITDA. So they have to figure out how to manage their bottom line a little better. And then now it's not by acquiring practices, because the banks are not just giving all that money, and their leverage changed with the interest rates. So now they need to turn back and say, how do we manage practices? We'll learn how to buy 100 or 200 or 600, but then now we actually have to manage them. And the easiest solution to increase the bottom line is the inventory management. So you're in the very right business for this period of time for these groups. We ran out of time, as we usually do. Okay. It's been a pleasure talking to you as usual. We always ask 2 questions at the end. The first question is there book, YouTube video, TED Talk, any information source that inspired you recently that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, so I think I sent you the link, Ian. I actually just got back from a week and a half in Japan. I've been to Japan many times. It's my favorite place. And I just watched a YouTube documentary on the Meiji Restoration, which happened in the middle of the 19th century. And, to make a long story short, Japan actually experienced 300 years worth of technological modernization within the span of 2 generations, about 40 years at the latter half of the 19th century. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what veterinary practices are looking at doing with inventory, because inventory management hasn't changed in 80 years for a lot of practices. They're still writing down what they need every week in a want book. And, CUBEX can come in and kind of go through an inventory revolution with them and modernize them very quickly. So I thought that was maybe good viewing, and it's also a very interesting topic. So that's maybe a recommendation. It's about an hour long. You can listen to it. You don't need to watch it. It's one of those kinds of documentaries.
Yeah, and then so last question for you, and then we promise we'll let you go, is another innovator that you would recommend we have on the show.
Yeah, so we were talking before the show about the diagnostic space because that's something that I think the three of us know a fair amount about, and there's never been more options for veterinarians in that space than there are today. It's exciting. There's been a ton of innovation there, and I'm going to call out someone that I just recently met from IDEXX, who I thought was super impressive. Her name is Sharuk Fataya, and she's really leading up some very interesting research from IDEXX around workflow and practice efficiency within that space. And we met with them a couple times on how what we do and what they do might intersect. As you know, IDEXX is a big partner of ours on the software side with EasyVet and Cornerstone. And I think she'd be a very intriguing guest to have on. She's a brilliant person. And also she's got some really interesting real-time information that she probably could share.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.